The story surrounding LaMelo Ball has started to feel less like the rise of a young NBA star and more like the beginning of a problem the rest of the league may not be ready to solve. Because for years, people laughed at the hype. They mocked the flashy passes, the deep threes, the confidence, the cameras, the entire Ball family circus that seemed larger than basketball itself. Critics said his game was too wild, too reckless, too unstructured to ever survive in the NBA. They believed the same creativity that made him entertaining would eventually become the exact reason he failed. But now, those same teams that once ignored him are starting to realize something terrifying. LaMelo Ball is no longer just a flashy point guard putting up highlights for social media. He is evolving into one of the most unpredictable offensive weapons in basketball. A player capable of controlling the pace of an entire game, while making defenses look helpless, possession after possession. And what makes this even scarier for the NBA is the fact that his rise almost never happened. When LaMelo entered the league in 2020, there were already doubts surrounding every part of his career. His basketball journey looked nothing like a traditional superstar path. Instead of climbing through the normal college system, he had been thrown across the world at a young age, dancing from Chino Hills to Lithuania, from the JBA to Australia, constantly living under pressure and criticism while millions watched every move. Some people saw genius in that chaos. Others saw disaster waiting to happen. Even after being selected third overall by the Charlotte Hornets, skepticism followed him immediately. Scouts questioned whether his unorthodox shot would ever become reliable. Analysts wondered if his flashy passing would lead to endless turnovers. And many believed his streetball style creativity simply would not work against elite NBA defenses. Then came his debut. No points. A rough performance. Immediate criticism. For most rookies, that kind of start can shake confidence. For LaMelo, it became fuel. Just days later, flashes of brilliance started appearing. The impossible passes, the deep pull-up threes, the rebounding, the pace control, the creativity. Every game felt chaotic, but hidden inside that chaos was a level of natural feel for basketball that only a handful of players on earth truly possess. Suddenly, comparisons to legends like Magic Johnson no longer sounded ridiculous. Then came the triple-double. At just 19 years old, LaMelo became the youngest player in NBA history to record one, breaking records while still coming off the bench. And in that moment, the NBA realized this was not simply another overhyped prospect carrying a famous last name. This was a real franchise player. What made LaMelo different was not just the stats. It was the way he generated them. Most young guards struggle to slow the game down. LaMelo seemed born with that ability. He could manipulate defenders with hesitation moves, no-look passes, changes of pace, and impossible angles that made defenses collapse before they even understood what was happening. One possession, he would launch a deep three from several feet beyond the arc. The next, he would thread a pass through for defenders without even looking at his target. Defenses hate unpredictability. And LaMelo became unpredictability personified. But just as quickly as the hype exploded, injuries began threatening everything. Every season seemed to bring another setback. Ankles, wrists, frustrating recovery timelines, constant interruptions just as momentum started building. And slowly, the questions returned. Could he stay healthy? Could a player this flashy survive physically in the modern NBA? Would he follow the same heartbreaking injury path as his older brother Lonzo Ball? Those doubts only grew stronger as Charlotte continued losing. Despite brilliant performances, the Hornets remained trapped near the bottom of the standings. LaMelo could drop 30 points and 10 assists, and somehow the team would still walk away defeated. Analysts started wondering whether his style actually translated to winning basketball. Critics focused heavily on turnovers, arguing that his risky playmaking created just as many problems as opportunities. And honestly, they were not entirely wrong. At times, LaMelo played like someone trying to create a highlight on every single possession. The talent was undeniable, but the discipline was inconsistent. There were games where he looked like a future MVP, followed immediately by nights where turnovers buried Charlotte before they ever had a chance. But something began changing during the 2025 to 2026 season. For the first time in years, the Hornets finally started building real talent around him. Brandon Miller developed into a legitimate scoring threat. Con Cupel added elite shooting. Miles Bridges provided athletic scoring and versatility. And suddenly, LaMelo no longer needed to force magic every possession. That changed everything. Instead of trying to carry the franchise entirely by himself, he began controlling games with maturity. The turnovers dropped. The shot selection improved. His efficiency skyrocketed. And once the game finally slowed down mentally, the full terror of his talent became visible. Now defenses had a nightmare scenario. If they trapped him high, he dissected them with passing. If they sacked off, he buried threes from deep range. If they switched bigger defenders onto him, his handle created separation instantly. And if they focused too heavily on stopping his scoring, he carved them apart as a playmaker. The most dangerous part was that LaMelo finally looked comfortable, not just talented, comfortable. That is what transforms stars into superstars. Charlotte's shocking turnaround suddenly became one of the biggest stories in basketball. After years of irrelevance, the Hornets exploded into a winning team, ripping off huge streaks and pushing themselves into playoff contention for the first time in nearly a decade. And at the center of everything stood LaMelo Ball, smiling while defenses panicked around him. What once looked like reckless basketball was beginning to look like evolution, because the NBA has never fully known how to guard players like him. His game breaks traditional structure. He thrives in chaos. He turns broken plays into assists. He weaponizes creativity itself. And when players like that finally learn discipline, they become terrifying. That is why teams are starting to hate facing Charlotte. Not because the Hornets are already champions, not because LaMelo has won MVPs, but because everyone can see where this is heading if he stays healthy. The flashes are no longer occasional. They are becoming consistent. The confidence is becoming leadership. And the mistakes that once held him back are slowly disappearing. For years, LaMelo Ball was treated like a social media phenomenon trying to survive in the NBA. Now, he is becoming something far more dangerous. A legitimate franchise superstar capable of changing the future of basketball in Charlotte forever. And the scariest part for the rest of the league, he still might not have reached his peak yet. If you think LaMelo Ball can eventually turn the Hornets into true championship contenders, let me know. Is he already one of the most dangerous young players in the NBA? Or do the injuries and turnovers still worry you? And if LaMelo finally gets a fully healthy season, how far can Charlotte really go? Drop your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more dramatic NBA stories and player deep dives.